Here's a sentence you've probably never said to yourself directly, even though it's quietly steering half the decisions you'll make in retirement. I don't want to leave the kids with nothing. It sounds like love. Most of the time it is love. But according to almost every retirement planner who's watched this play out for decades, it's also the single most expensive financial decision most Australians never actually decide to make, because nobody sits down and asks it out loud. It just happens. One postponed holiday, one delayed renovation at a time, until an entire decade has quietly been spent on someone else's behalf. Today we're going to find out what that decision is actually costing, who it's really for, and why the number most people are saving toward isn't even the right number to begin with. Call them Steve and Karen, 58, Newcastle, own their home outright, combined super around $420,000. On paper, they're behind. The benchmark most Australian planners use, the ASFA retirement standard, puts a comfortable couple's retirement at around $75,000 a year, funded by a super balance in the order of $700,000. By that number, Steve and Karen are $280,000 short, or so they think. So they've quietly started doing what most Australians in their position do: cutting back, fewer holidays, delaying the kitchen renovation. Karen mentioned once, almost as a joke, that they could just wait on the trip to Japan they'd been talking about since before COVID. Steve didn't argue. Neither of them said the real reason out loud, but somewhere in the last few years, without ever deciding to, they'd started treating their daughter's future house deposit as more important than their own next decade. Nobody sat them down and told them to make that trade. There was no conversation, no spreadsheet, no moment where they weighed it up. They made it by default, one small decision at a time, and that default is exactly the mistake we opened with. Here's what makes this pattern so common. ASFA's own research suggests a meaningful share of retirees end up dying with more in their super than they retired with, not because they're spending frugally by choice, but because a quiet, unexamined instinct to preserve capital for the next generation is doing the budgeting for them, without ever being invited to. Before we get back to that trade-off, Steve and Karen need one number they don't currently have. The current full age pension is worth roughly $31,000 a year for a single person, or around $47,000 combined for a couple. And here's the part almost nobody explains properly. You don't lose the pension entirely once your assets creep above the full rate threshold. It tapers. For every extra dollar of assets above the cutoff, the pension reduces gradually, not to zero, but on a sliding scale that extends well beyond what most people assume. A couple with $500,000 in super, well under the $700,000 comfortable benchmark, doesn't need to self-fund the whole $75,000 a year. They only need to cover the gap between whatever pension they qualify for and their actual lifestyle. For a couple in Steve and Karen's position, that gap often lands somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 a year, not $75,000. Run that through Steve and Karen's numbers, and their real target isn't $700,000. It's $450,000. That $280,000 gap everyone told them to panic about. It's actually $30,000, a few years, not a decade. Which means the renovation they postponed, the holiday they cancelled, that wasn't math. That was the inheritance decision again, wearing a different disguise. And it's worth pausing on how easy that disguise is to miss. Nobody ever tells themselves, I'm sacrificing my 60s for a house deposit my daughter may not even need for another 20 years. They just tell themselves, we should probably be careful. The second sentence feels responsible. It's the first sentence that's actually true. So here's the mistake, stated plainly. Most people don't decide to sacrifice their retirement for their children's inheritance. They just never decide not to. And the absence of a decision becomes the decision. Do the arithmetic on who that sacrifice actually benefits. If Steve and Karen live into their late 80s, entirely realistic, their kids will inherit somewhere in their late 50s or early 60s. Already homeowners or not, that was decided years earlier. Not by Steve and Karen's sacrifice, already through the expensive years of raising their own kids, already near their own peak earning years. Meanwhile, the years Steve and Karen are cutting back right now, 58 to 68, are the ones they'll never get to spend differently. There's no version of this where they get those years back at 80 instead. Steve and Karen aren't the only version of this story. Compare them to another couple. Call them Marion and Alan. Similar age, similar balance. The difference isn't that they love their kids any less. It's that 4 years ago, at their own kitchen table, they actually ran the numbers, realized the gap was smaller than they'd assumed, and made an explicit choice. Spend the Japan trip money now, and let whatever's left when they're gone be exactly that, whatever's left. Not a target, not a sacrifice, a byproduct. The financial outcome for their kids may end up being about the same either way, smaller than the headline number, sized more by chance than by plan. The difference isn't the number, it's that Marion and Alan chose theirs with their eyes open. Steve and Karen are drifting toward theirs without ever having chosen anything at all. Financial planners describe the same turning point almost every couple who gets this right can point to. The night they finally asked the blunt question out loud. Who is this actually for? Us now or them later, when they may not even need it? Once that question is on the table, 3 practical decisions follow directly from the answer. First, timing. If the money is there or close to it, the years from 60 to 70 are the ones worth spending it on. Planners call the alternative pushing the boulder uphill, working an extra 5 years to pad a balance that was already enough, at the cost of the healthiest years you'll get to use it in. Mobility, energy, the physical ability to actually do the trip rather than just afford it. None of that waits for your super balance to catch up.
Second, who manages the money? If retiring means inheriting a self-managed super fund neither of you wants to run, you haven't protected the family's wealth. You've traded your weekends for it. That's not stewardship. That's just a second job with worse pay, and it tends to show up in exactly the years you were supposed to be free. If investing genuinely interests you, that's a different conversation. If it doesn't, professional management isn't an indulgence. It's the thing that actually lets the first decision, the timing one, hold up in practice. Third, how long it actually needs to last, based on your own family's history, not the national average. This is what turns "we might run out" from a vague, permanent fear into an actual calculable number. And for most people, once it's calculated honestly, it's smaller than the fear. Look at your own parents, your own grandparents. That's a far more useful data point than any national life expectancy table. None of that changes what Steve and Karen ultimately choose to leave behind. It just moves the decision from something that happened to them by default to something they actually choose, with their eyes open. Which raises the obvious next question. How does a couple actually have that conversation? It doesn't need a financial planner in the room, at least not for the first pass. It needs 3 numbers on a page. What you'll realistically receive from the age pension, based on your assets today. What your current balance actually covers once that pension is factored in, and what the gap is, not the scary headline number, the real one. Then it needs one honest sentence said out loud by each of you. If the answer is that we can afford more than we're spending, are we spending less on purpose or by accident? That sentence is the whole exercise. Everything else, the ASFA benchmark, the pension taper, the balance, is just the evidence you bring to that one question. If this reframed how you think about your own number, subscribe Aussie Wealth with Prince. Next day, we walk through exactly how the age pension asset test works, balance by balance, so you can run your own version of Steve and Karen's numbers. The best inheritance most parents ever give their kids isn't the number in the will. It's not spending the best years of their own life quietly making sure that number was bigger than it needed to be.